And our new Fox News polling shows that people perhaps are concerned with how things are going. This is as of March 14th. Those that say they disapprove, 56%, more than half. Those who approve of the president's handling of the economy is at 43%. And in that same polling, we asked about the most important issue facing the country today. And top of the list is inflation. And the economy is number 2, and jobs. Those are first and second as it goes down to political division and preservation of democracy. Is the president doing enough to answer the needs and demands of the American voter when it comes to the economy and lowering prices?
The president and his economic team are working on this effort every single day. And the president is not only trying to fix the mess created by the previous administration's incompetence and reckless spending, he is trying to fix decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off, that have sent jobs overseas, and that have forced millions of Americans out of their jobs.
Caroline Levitt claims Trump is doing everything he can to fix the problem that's forced millions of Americans out of their jobs by forcing Americans out of their jobs. The pressure is building, even from conservative outlets.
When the president goes down to Florida on the weekends, does he ever hear from, there are so many retired folks down in Florida, does he ever hear from any retired Americans who are stressed about these wild swings in the stock market because of the tariff uncertainty, and they're sitting there on fixed income or living off a 401k, and they don't know how much money's going to be left?
Well, certainly they are legitimate concerns, and the president takes those concerns very seriously, and he's addressing them every single day. And tomorrow's announcement is to protect future generations of the senior citizens you mentioned. It's for their kids and their grandkids to ensure that there are jobs here in the United States of America for their children to live the American dream, just like they presumably did. And as for their worries about their 401ks, their Social Security, I just addressed Social Security. This president is always going to protect it for our tax-paying senior citizens.
And you said that the president right now is with the trade and tariff team. They are very confident that this is all going to work. But
Yes.
What if they're wrong?
They're not going to be wrong. It is going to work.
This is the ongoing result of this administration's lazy politics. They never feel the need to give evidence-based answers to questions about his plans that have been pushed back on with evidence-based opposition. They simplify it to politically tribal behavior on steroids. And then when the fans of the team are suffering, the answer is that they should, for some reason.
And I said this earlier, and I full-heartedly believe that everything's going to work out. And the markets are a snapshot, as you said, Kayleigh, today compared to yesterday, compared to tomorrow. The issue is going to be which generations of today are you choosing? Because those are the ones who just voted you in November. And so being transparent about what that bumpy road is going to be like and making an educated guess. Look, we have a president now that isn't whiffing anything, and he's certainly not taking unmitigated risk. He can read the road ahead and make a deal. Art of the deal. So part of that deal is making sure your shareholders, the actual people not by money but by vote, understand what's coming. And those 401k people who are depending, those retirees, all of that, just talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation used to go to war, people in this country would support the war effort with their materials at home and making things for weaponry and all of that. We got to do 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate. Yeah, it's just a bumpy period that he said nothing about when he told you that he'd have everything fixed and glorious on day one. It started with blaming Democrats, and now that his policies are unquestionably having negative effects on people's lives, it's morphed into the people with the least needing to sacrifice even more for him. When you've convinced your supporters to not expect anything from you because you've never represented their needs, the only steps left are to expect more from them after you've failed them.
On the tariffs that you're planning, so you're expecting to hit something like 10 to 15 countries, is that right?
No.
All countries? All of the countries across the board?
Not 10. I don't know who told you 10 or 15 countries.
Well, we heard that. So we heard that you were going to aim for the 15%.
But you didn't hear it from me.
Okay, so how many countries will be in that initial tranche?
You'd start with all countries, so let's see what happens. There are many countries. I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15.
So you're starting with all countries?
Well, essentially, all of the countries that we're talking about. Wouldn't be talking about all countries. It's not a cutoff. And if you look at the history and you look at what's happened to us, you go to certain places, go to Asia, and you take a look at every single country in Asia, what they've done to the United States in trade, and by the way, in military in a certain way. You look at, take a look at trade with Asia.
I get the feeling the reason he's rejected the idea of 10 to 15 countries he's targeting is because he doesn't know every country that he's even targeting with these trade wars. And then he assumes everyone owes him something. And while he's boasting, other countries are preparing to ice us out.
China, Japan, and South Korea held the first trade talks in 5 years on Sunday, amid concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's import tariffs. The three Asian manufacturing giants agreed to, quote, closely cooperate for a comprehensive and high-level talks to improve free trade in the region. That's according to a statement released after the meeting. Trade ministers from the three nations met ahead of Trump's planned announcement on Wednesday of more tariffs in what he calls, quote, Liberation Day.
When our biggest concern is telling the rest of the world that we don't need them, the rest of the world may begin the process of proving us wrong. His ego is potentially forging agreements and alliances among countries that have long-standing territorial disputes that have kept them from working together. So while others are thinking and maneuvering, our leaders are hoping whatever Trump comes up with will just somehow work.
Are you 100% behind what the president is doing in terms of tariffs?
Look, the president is going to announce, on April the 2nd, what that plan is. I think a lot of people are anticipating it. The president and his team have been listening to businesses and lawmakers along the way, and I believe that those lessons will be incorporated into the tariff proposal that he comes up with here in a couple days.
So you think that the tariff proposal will be beneficial to your constituents?
I'm optimistic that it will be.
Optimistic, despite a track record of self-serving agenda that's resulted in Republicans and Fox News pundits literally telling people to sacrifice for the sake of the president's demands. Because when local leaders are faced with the real-life situations that could happen to their constituents due to these ego-driven policies from Trump, the optimism isn't so high.
What are you planning for?
Well, I've been talking to a lot of my businesses, my business community, to try to find out what they're doing. And I mean, the scenario is pretty simple. At least what most people think is, higher tariffs lead to higher costs leads to lower demand leads to lower production. And ultimately, that's what becomes a mayor's issue. Lower production and lower demand means job loss. And that really is a significant issue. We've gone through really challenging times in Southeast Michigan before. And I'm not sure, these are just negotiation tactics. I hope the president and his team are able to move quickly. I was pleased that he had a very positive meeting with the prime minister at the end of last week. But the uncertainty, as you see the markets reacting to it, it's daunting. It's impossible to prepare.
You think this could lead to job losses in Rochester Hills?
I think it could very quickly. I think most of the folks I'm talking to say, they can survive this kind of back and forth for about maybe 30 days. They've been preparing to try to have supply here, to try to handle supply chains. But if this is something that we're waiting for jobs to repatriate back to the United States, we know that takes, that's a great and wonderful plan. We're all supportive of that. But that can take 24 to 36 months. And most companies wouldn't be operating at the same levels they are now if you have this tariff environment for 2 or 3 years. It simply couldn't be the same.